Wasn't going to do any more today. I just read the Caller Times. All of this has to do with truth, racism that's coming right out of the newspaper of Corpus Christi. Legal cases. Okay, I read one, I said I'm not going to do video. The first article I read, and it'll fit. Truth always fits. The first article that had me thinking I'm ready to speak on it was 2 cases that are dismissed within Nueces County by the new district attorney's office by the name of Mark Gonzalez. This has been an ongoing case, and briefly, I'm familiar with it. A man by the name of Celis had a lot of charges against him, putting himself out as a lawyer, and supposedly he was not a lawyer, money laundering charges. Now, he's been fighting this case. I believe he was registered like in Mexico as a lawyer, and then a few years ago, some of the local attorneys kind of got on this man who is Hispanic, and so they got a lot of cases against him. But the reason they just dropped, so he's fighting it for years now, but it says the district attorney's office dropped 2 more cases just now. Why? Because the lead investigator with the district attorney's office was notified then that he's going to plead the 5th Amendment for protection against crimes against himself. But now this is the lead investigator. We had an officer do the same thing in the Rosas case. When you have people that are in law enforcement, prosecutors, cops, and others, when you have them using their 5th Amendment rights, they said he was going to plead to protect himself. This man is still a prosecutor. The cops that have done that to protect themselves from illegal activity, these men are still doing whatever they're pleading the 5th to protect. And it was this lead investigator out of Nueces County, it didn't give his name, who should immediately be fired. Never mind the crimes that he's covering himself up for. But he'll go on to continue to do other things. But I guess in this case, the defense is going to challenge how he obtained the search warrant and possibly lied and broke the law. And I just read an article recently. It said, lying to Congress. You lie on an official document statement. But I've noticed that the law enforcement here were very brazen in some of the cases in the past. Open criminal activity. I used to think, I've not seen it that open. But I wasn't going to mention it. But that's one note about our county. 2 cases dismissed because the lead investigator, who is still the lead investigator on other cases, decided to protect himself. He was going to plead the 5th. And a cop did that in another case. That's not normal for a county, okay? And for those men to continue rolling the way they do. But the second one that said, let me do the video and I'll go short. The Corpus Caller has the goal. Nick Jimenez is a Mexican, Hispanic. And I've seen statements of the way they have treated the white mayor, Joe McComb, using language that they would never use against Nelda Martinez, who was the former Hispanic mayor. And their racism bleeds out with a title like this. Bannon, I can't explain it. You should know who Steve Bannon is. The Caller Times runs an article, Bannon and white Catholics share views. Now this article, would you ever run an article, regardless of what you think the merit of this article is, in your paper, would you ever run one that says a particular Hispanic person or a particular black person, Louis Farrakhan, I should mention him. He's come out and made some statements like he's accepted Christ. But would you ever run an article and the title would simply say Farrakhan or whoever and Black Baptists share views, or some notorious Hispanic figure, and say this Hispanic figure and Hispanic Pentecostals share views. You would never do that, because that's playing into identity politics. And I read the article, and it's by a man by the name of Eugene Scott. And I would bet probably he's a black man. I'm not sure. I'm thinking of a particular columnist, Eugene, it's another person. Just because you're Hispanic, or just because you're black, or just because you're white, it doesn't give you the license for you yourself to associate 40-something% of white Catholics. You associated them with the figure, and you used white Catholics. You wouldn't do that in a negative way towards another race. And that shows your racial prejudice and bigotry. I had a conversation with a liberal friend a few weeks ago who hates Trump and hates him. That's fine. And I said, you know, there was a case of a young white girl who applied to college. And that white girl was turned down solely because of her race. And she qualified more than another minority. But that's what it was. It was not hidden. And that was considered good. And so she took a lawsuit, and I don't know what she said, but how could you just openly say, it's my white skin that has disqualified me? And that's what you've had in the affirmative action. It's got to that. And Nick Jimenez, or black leaders, or white people, they would not dare say that. And I explained to my liberal friend, who's also white, I said, don't you think the alt-right, don't you think they see that? And don't you think that fuels? There were groups, and I told my friend, I said, what would you think if you saw a white person wear a shirt that simply said, I'm proud to be white? That group, if that's all they said, and I'm not like that, but I said, if you had a white person that wore a shirt or had a campus group that said, we're going to just celebrate our European history, that group would immediately be branded as a racist group. And you know, many people see that and know that's true. And that fuels. And there are many white people in politics and media, Hispanics as well, even if they know that to be true, would never tell you that. Because they're not looking for even scales. They use their so-called social justice activism as a badge that they also have hidden behind in the murder of 9-month-old children in the womb, which is the most horrendous thing, justifying late-term abortion. Knowing it's wicked, but convincing themselves that they would prefer to have an image in the community, an image within circles that says, look how liberal-minded I am, and the inability to see wickedness and to defend a child that does not have a voice. So I'll do this last one, because it's a disgrace that the Caller Times, let's see the faces, Nick Jimenez, editorial page. It's a disgrace that you would do that. You would actually have the goal to say white Catholics and a very hated public figure by the name of Steve Bannon share views. I could find Mexican Catholics. I could find black Catholics that maybe a percentage of them might share the views of another person or figure. But to say black Catholics, what that is That's identity politics. And the most ironic thing about it is the man who wrote this article that the Color Times should have never put in their paper. Because anything you do for social justice and harmony, when you run these things, you disgrace that. You disgrace that. Because the Catholic Church, whites included, have the historic heritage of the defense of minorities. And I read the article, but it makes no difference. Just the fact that you would put a title like that you would never use about a black group of Christians or a Hispanic group of Christians, you feel proud to put that about a white group of Christians, specifically white Catholics. Eugene Scott, this disgraceful article that you had the gall to put in there, reports on politics of identity for the Washington Post. Amen.